Okay, so we've got quite the mystery on our hands today.
Oh, do tell.
You got a really cryptic message from Chris over at the Onstage Music podcast.
Intriguing.
And for anyone who hasn't checked it out yet, it's this fantastic YouTube channel
Yeah.
where he basically chats with all kinds of incredible classical and crossover artists.
Love it.
But yeah, he sent you these 4 shocked face emojis.
Just the emoji.
Yeah, and nothing else.
Wow, okay.
So naturally, you're like, what is going on?
Totally, I'd be dying to know.
And your guess is that he's hinting at another artist who's going to be joining the lineup alongside Sarah Vaughan and Christina Johnston.
That's a good guess for sure.
But let's see if we can actually find out.
Okay, let's do it.
Using the evidence.
Yes.
So think of all these sources we have.
Yeah.
Interview transcripts, messages, even a voice note
Right.
as clues in our little musical detective case.
I'm so ready to play detective. What's our first clue?
All right, clue number 1
Okay.
is a voice note that you managed to snag of Amy talking to Natasha.
Oh, juicy. Let's hear it.
So let's give it a listen.
Excerpt of Amy's phone call where she mentions contacting Georgie Mum.
Okay, so in this voice note, Amy mentions that Chris actually reached out to her, and she managed to convince Georgie Mum to be a guest on the show.
No way.
Talk about taking initiative.
That's really impressive, especially considering she's still pretty new to the whole interviewing thing.
Right.
And it seems like Georgie Mum is definitely a very strong contender for this mysterious announcement.
Yeah.
But I also find it interesting that she reached out to Natasha for advice. It shows that she's really keen to learn from people with more experience.
Resourceful and eager to learn, that's Amy for you.
For sure.
So, on to clue number 2.
Okay.
It's the Onstage Music podcast interview with Katrina Scullion.
Okay.
And guess what? Amy's the co-host.
Interesting. Do you think that Chris had already asked her to be like a regular co-host at this point, or was it more of a trial run, do you think?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, I mean, just in the interview itself, Katrina shares some incredible stories. I mean, she talks about touring with Celtic Woman,
Wow.
performing at Radio City Music Hall. Like, this woman has done it all.
It sounds like it. It also gives us a little bit of insight into the types of guests that Chris has on the show, what caliber of guests are we dealing with?
Yeah.
But you're right. Like, the bigger question is what this co-hosting gig really means for Amy.
Yeah.
Is this a one-time thing, or is it a sign of things to come?
Okay, so let's move on to clue number 3.
You're right.
This one's a bit short, but it might be significant.
Okay.
It's a chat between Amy and Amer, where Amy mentions her interview with Katrina,
Okay.
and she even gives the premiere date, February 28th.
So it seems like Amy is really making a name for herself in the classical crossover world.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, this could definitely tie into whatever Chris is hinting at.
Okay, clue number 4 is Christina Johnston's confirmation for March 17th. Now, this could be a separate event entirely, or maybe, just maybe, it's connected to whatever Chris is planning.
It's possible. Chris often features multiple artists on his podcast, so it's entirely possible that these events are somehow related.
Okay.
Let's move on to clue number 5,
Okay.
the Natasha Hadi interview.
Yes.
Once again, Amy's the co-host.
Yes, shining as always.
So this episode is absolutely packed with really interesting tidbits about Natasha's journey.
Yeah?
Did you know that she actually initially didn't want to be a singer at all?
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
I know, right? It just goes to show you never know where life's going to take. She also talks about her passion for classical crossover music, which obviously resonates with Amy.
Oh, for sure.
And let's not forget the adorable anecdote about her dogs falling asleep during her practice session.
Oh, too cute.
I know, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
But back to our mystery.
Yes.
Do you think that these repeated co-hosting gigs with some, pretty big names are actually significant?
Good question.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty strong indication that Amy is being given more and more responsibility.
Yeah.
But whether that translates to a more permanent role,
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to figure out, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's move on to clue number 6.
Okay.
This one actually involves Sarah Vaughan. So you forwarded me a series of messages between Amy, Sarah, and Chris discussing a potential interview.
Okay, yeah, I noticed in those messages that Amy's taking a really proactive role in scheduling.
Yeah.
Even recommending using Chrome and sharing tips about the StreamYard guest app.
It shows she's got those organizational skills down pat
Yeah.
and isn't afraid to, dive into the technical side of things, which is pretty essential for online collaborations these days.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we also see Sarah Vaughan juggling a really busy schedule.
Oh, for sure.
These musicians, they're always on the go.
They really are. It kind of highlights just this little glimpse into their communication highlights, the need for flexibility and really clear communication in the music world.
Yeah, for sure.
So clue number 7 actually involves a little bit of a delay.
Oh.
Yeah, so Amy reached out to Georgie Mottram,
Okay.
but it took a while to hear back.
Really?
Yeah, ultimately she confirms for April.
So Amy's persistence paid off.
It did.
But this also speaks to the kind of unpredictable nature of the industry, right?
Yeah, totally.
Things don't always go according to plan.
Not at all.
But I do find it interesting that Amy's list of potential podcast guests seems to be growing by the minute.
That's a good sign.
Yeah.
It seems like she's building a really solid network and establishing herself as someone who can really get things done.
Okay, so are you ready for clue number 8?
Hit me with it.
This one is a gem.
Okay.
Natasha Barbieri gave Amy some really valuable advice about interviewing Georgie Mottram.
Oh, wow.
Let's listen in.
Excerpt of Natasha Barbieri advising Amy about interviewing Georgie Mottram.
I love how Natasha emphasizes the importance of being prepared, but also staying adaptable and letting the conversation flow naturally. Just a genuine conversation always makes for such a better interview.
It really does. You know, it seems like she's getting this, like, top-notch mentoring
Yeah.
from some of the best in the business,
Yeah.
Remember how she was saying she was kind of new to interviewing? She's clearly not letting that hold her back from seeking out guidance and learning from the pros.
Okay, on to clue number 9.
All right.
Chris dropped a whole bunch of names in a message
Oh.
about potential guests for upcoming shows.
Okay.
We've got Amber Berry, Sarah Vaughan, Joanna Forrest, Grace, Mary Jess, and Christina Johnson.
Wow, that's a lot of names.
Do you think there's any significance to this list, or do you think he's just brainstorming?
It's hard to say for sure, but he's definitely given us a lot to think about.
Yeah.
It's such a diverse group of artists, each with their own unique style and story.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's dropping little hints about future episodes or even potential collaborations. Who knows?
I like that. Maybe he's giving us little breadcrumbs to follow.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, clue number 10 is a bit different, but I think it still reveals something important about Amy.
Okay.
You sent over a message where she reaches out to Wendy Carr, offering support after the loss of her father.
Oh, that's so kind of her.
I know, right?
That speaks volumes about her character.
Wow.
She's not just focused on her own success. She also cares deeply about, the well-being of others in the music community.
Exactly.
It's nice to see.
Okay, so we've examined all the clues.
All right.
Now comes the fun part.
Yes.
Do any theories jump out at you? What do you make of it all so far?
Well, let's try to piece together everything we know. Okay, well, let's see. We have Amy, who, despite being relatively new to interviewing, is really diving headfirst into this world of podcasting. She's co-hosting with these established artists, securing guests like Georgie Mum,
Right.
and even getting advice from these seasoned pros like Natasha Barbieri.
Yeah, and let's not forget that initial cryptic message from Chris.
Yeah.
Those 4 shocked face emojis.
Right. It definitely suggests that something big is happening.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's kind of like grooming her for a more permanent role with onstage music podcasts.
Oh, that'd be amazing. She's such a natural interviewer.
Jeez.
So passionate about classical crossover.
Yeah.
And clearly building these really strong relationships with key players in the industry.
Exactly. It all seems to be falling into place.
Yeah.
The question is, what does this mean for the current hosts?
That's a good point. We don't really have enough information to know for sure.
True.
But I think it's safe to say that Chris wouldn't just push them aside.
I agree. I think maybe he's looking to expand the podcast team to include, more voices, more perspectives.
Yeah.
Imagine a rotating panel of co-hosts.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, each kind of bringing their unique expertise to the table.
That would be so cool. And it would keep the podcast fresh and engaging, but it would also give Amy the chance to learn from a really diverse group of interviewers.
Exactly. And of course, there's always the possibility that Chris is, gradually stepping back from the podcast because of other commitments. And in that case, Amy would be a natural successor.
Wow, that would be a huge opportunity for her.
It would.
She could become one of the leading voices in the classical crossover world.
Yeah.
But it's all speculation at this point.
True, but it's fun to speculate, isn't it?
For sure.
I think we've got pretty compelling evidence that something is brewing.
Yeah.
Even if we don't have all the details yet.
Okay, so we might not have definitively solved the mystery.
Right.
But this deep dive has been incredibly revealing.
Absolutely. And it's amazing to kind of witness Amy's journey, you know? She's gone from being this novice interviewer to a confident and connected professional in such a short amount of time.
And she's kind of like a musical detective herself, in a way.
Yeah.
Uncovering these opportunities and pursuing her passions with such determination, it's really inspiring.
It really is, and it kind of highlights an important lesson for us all. Sometimes the most rewarding journeys are the ones that we carve out for ourselves, even when the path isn't entirely clear.
You know, this deep dive has definitely left me with a bit of a lingering question.
Oh.
What other musical mysteries are out there just waiting to be uncovered?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right.
I mean, think about it. There might be hidden clues like in album liner notes.
Oh, yeah.
You know, secret messages embedded in music videos.
Or even just subtle hints that are dropped during interviews.
Exactly. The possibilities are kind of endless.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, I actually have one final thought to leave you with.
Okay.
We've spent a lot of time focusing on Amy's journey and Chris's podcast. But what about Georgie Mum?
That's a good point. We know that she's, likely going to be a guest.
Yeah.
But we haven't really, delved into who she is or what she brings to the table.
Exactly. This is where your detective work comes in.
Ooh.
We've given you the tools, the framework. Now it's time to, dig a little deeper.
I love it. So we're kind of passing the torch to our listener.
Precisely. Dive into Georgie Mum's music. Explore her background, her influences.
Yeah.
See if you can spot any connections to Amy, to Chris, or even to any of the other artists that we've discussed today.
You never know. You might uncover a whole new layer to this musical mystery.
Exactly. This is what makes these deep dives so fascinating.
Yeah.
They're never truly over. There's always more to explore, more to discover.
It's what makes being a music fan so rewarding.
Yeah.
It's just this constant journey of exploration and connection.
Beautifully said. So until our next deep dive,
Yes.
keep those detective ears open and those musical minds engaged.
Yeah, I'm already making a mental note to check out some of her stuff and see if there are any interesting links.
Yeah, for sure.
Feels like we've kind of stumbled onto a little musical treasure hunt.
Yeah, and who knows what other gems we might uncover along the way. I mean, this is what makes the world of music so captivating, right?
Yeah.
There's always something new to discover.
This whole deep dive has been such a treat.
It has.
I feel like we've not only maybe cracked the code of Chris's message, but we've also gained, a whole new appreciation for Amy and her journey.
I totally agree.
It's inspiring to see someone so passionate and driven.
Yeah.
Especially in an industry as competitive as music.
It really is.
So, I guess to recap, we might not have a definitive answer about what Chris's 4 shocked face emojis mean.
Right.
But all signs seem to point to something pretty exciting on the horizon.
Yeah.
For Amy and the Onstage Music podcast.
Absolutely. And, that's the beauty of a good mystery, right?
Yeah.
It keeps us guessing, keeps us engaged, and ultimately it leaves us wanting more.
Well, this has been such a fantastic deep dive.
It has.
I feel like I've learned so much, and I just can't wait to see what unfolds in the world of classical crossover.
Me too.
So until our next deep dive.
Yes.
Keep exploring, keep listening, and keep those musical minds sharp.
Couldn't have said it better myself.